Welcome everybody to Data Innovation Summit 2020. I'm here with my panelists from Kaito, Solita, and CGI. Please introduce yourselves. Lasse?
Hi everyone, my name is Lasse Girs. I work for Solita. I'm a data business designer and principal consultant at Solita. Been working with data and analytics for 15 plus soon 20 years, from traditional data management BI to modern big data and AI implementation as well. Currently been a consultant for 2.5 years, and my mantra is technology is easy, but the organizational change, that's the real deal.
That sounds about right. Mattias?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Mattias Lindvall. I'm a VP for BI and Analytics in CGI. I've been working with BI and Analytics for the past 20 plus years. And I've been everything from a DBA to the value architect, helping clients get value out of their analytics solutions.
Excellent. And then last but not least.
Hi, I'm Nicola Holmes, and I work for Kaito as a senior data scientist. I've been working with data and AI for about 10 years now, starting as an automatic specialist mechatronics engineer. So I've been working sort of with the brains of things all the way through, right through to the bodies, and really focused on industrial data and industrial automation on a larger MLOps scale.
Excellent. So the theme of today's talk is how to use advanced analytics efficiently across your entire organization. And we've seen that some businesses have been more successful than others in really implementing AI across the entire organization. Can you guys give some examples from the past year of successful AI and advanced analytics implementations with customers that you've been in touch with, and maybe why you think they were successful despite the odds? Perhaps you can start, Nicola.
Well, I've worked with a large company here in Finland who has actually been working to slowly improve their IoT offerings with the allowance of advanced analytics such as AI, industrially influenced ML, and sort of being able to support those offerings for a larger scope for their clients. And what sort of they've done is they've recognized that MLOps needs to work with their DevOps for any software offering and actually be allowed to have the experimentation element there that works with machine learning elements and advanced analytics while not constraining them to a simple and more sort of traditional DevOps approach, while also not getting in the way of all the things that actually make a traditional CI/CD system work.
So what would you say was the key differentiator?
Willingness to actually recognize that it's something that can work with a system, but takes a little bit more freedom and understanding.
Okay, so an open-mindedness.
Open mind that ML isn't going to be a simple answer. If it was a simple answer, it would have been a simple question to begin with, so you wouldn't have needed advanced analytics.
Right.
Understanding that experimentation is part of this and a part of the whole procedure, and even how the algorithms themselves work is sort of key to being able to embrace and understand and get an MLOps system and something that is using advanced analytics, AI, ML, any of the applications of all of those, regardless of what you call them, where you identify them.
Right. I think a lot of people speak about ML ops or perhaps machine learning and advanced analytics like it's a destination, and it's not something you ever end up with. Lasse, what about you? From this past year, is that something you've also felt, that companies are starting on a journey rather than having implemented something that's finished?
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of, in the last year, being involved in so-called traditional industries like agriculture and paper and forestry, which industries that have been around for a long, long time. And it's, as you guys discussed, there's a lot of process changes that is involved here. It's not just the devices, the IoT devices, and then the algorithms, but there's a whole lot of process changes, organizational changes involved. And we've been helping define things like, what does it mean to be a business owner of an AI solution? Because if you don't have that, then the solution, this leads to the one of the answers to the question. The solution is actually very difficult to move into production if you don't have the business ownership behind it. So it's been really interesting to see the the difference between traditional industries adopting these new technologies and solutions, and how much it challenges their existing organizational structures and ways of working and processes and roles and responsibilities as well. That's been it's been a huge learning path, I think, for the last couple of years.
I'm going to want to circle back on that later on, because it's really nice that we have somebody both from an industry where they're, at least on the surface, you have tons of data ready at hand, so to speak, and traditional industries like the ones you're describing now, where even though there should be data, or perhaps there is data, a lot of times you're met with, well, we don't have anything interesting to really do machine learning with, and a lot of skepticism. And so, it's up to us to sort of ideate and then provide vision.
Well, I've seen everything from the more explorative approach of trying to reinvent your business model using machine learning and AI, which is hard. But if you have the right approach to it, and you're open-minded and really getting into the new stuff, but you have to have your sort of infrastructure set up behind you when you do it, because otherwise you get into that sort of just doing the pilots and it comes out of it, and you don't have any lasting value. And getting the business and the technology workers to work together for implementing new business models and getting that AI capability out into the business and generating value for the company. We helped a client moving from selling very low value cleaning services all the way up to selling clean facilities. That they only had to do the service when there was dust and stuff in the premises. So they could really up their scale and provide something that no one else could. And it was very quick. It took us 3 to 6 months to go from idea to actually selling clean premises to their clients. When you can do that and you have a company working together like that, then it's really effective. We have other examples where people have 2-year machine learning initiatives that still hasn't produced a single euro in value for those clients. So it's very much up to are you pragmatic, are you flexible? I really heard what Nicola said before regarding the sort of open-mindedness that's really needed all the way from top management to the...
I want to circle back to that again in just a moment, your anecdotes about situations where it didn't work. I think people think that's super interesting, but let's go one more round, because here this segues back to what Nicola was talking about before, where you use the expression now to transform business processes and business models. And so in the industry that you work in, Nicola, I think a lot of people maybe are already of the idea, at least, that data can transform the way they work. Whereas in the traditional industries, they might be a bit more skeptical. Do they still think in terms of transforming business models, or is it merely optimization of existing business processes? So is it entirely new, or is it just sort of iterative and evolutionary?
Now, that depends on the division within the business. If we're talking about a traditional R&D department, you have people there who have 20, 30 years of in-depth experience in that industrial process. If they're embracing what the new powers of AI can bring, given that some of them have been using some of these statistical methods for nigh on 20 years, but they've got the computational power behind them, they see it as an optimization. They see it as something that will improve how they do their work, speed up how they do their work, and take something that could be a couple of weeks into a couple of minutes, allow them to get that insight and then drill down with their expertise. However, from the business side, they see it as something that is completely turning everything on its head. It's completely new. It's a little bit scary sometimes. And they want to know that whatever they're sinking in isn't going to disrupt what they're currently getting out of their experts, and actually is going to deliver something faster.
I do get the impression that a lot of people are they want to see the results before they commit to a project that gives results, and are a little bit perhaps afraid of taking that plunge. Lasse, especially in these traditional industries, how do you overcome that hurdle where people want the POC that shows value before they invest, which is a reasonable ask?
Yeah, it is. And it should be. I mean, all of this should aim to deliver some sort of business value. There's one thing you said earlier, you used the terms of optimization and then sort of discovery. One of the things you have to make clear from the start is your effort, your AI initiative, is it about optimization, your current business, optimizing your current business processes, or discovering some completely new business models or products or services, or something that you haven't done before? And I think a lot of organizations still sort of struggle because they haven't defined what it is that they're doing. Are they just optimizing what they have or creating something new? Once you start creating something new, you're going to challenge your existing ways of working and your organizational boundaries and everything else. And accepting that is sort of the first step. I think one of the key sort of success criteria there is to find the right people, the champions, or sort of, we call them half crazy product owners, but the people that have really thick skin and enough mandate and influence and impact to drive this through. We've seen that in large organizations, especially, that if you don't have these people who are willing to take the chance and actually, get a few punches, or receive a few punches here and there, it's not going to happen without them. So that's really, really important to find those people.
That resonates very well with what we've experienced here, that you need these evangelists or champions. Let's put a pin in that one and go to you, Mattias, and ask you these cases that didn't succeed. And maybe you can say, did they have champions as well? What do you think made it so that the AI initiatives didn't succeed?
I would say that there is not one recipe for disaster, but many. As you said before, the team and the champion is, of course, very important. But I've also experienced projects where they have a champion, but they don't have the necessary technology experts available to do it. It's really hard when you have such a diverse technology that's needed to put this into operational excellence with the machine learning and everything. Then it's when you have to have such a huge team and such a diverse set of skills, and you never have them available at the same time, and then it's impossible. The champion is, of course, extremely important, and without it, nothing happens. But if it's equally important to have all the other experts available as well.
Provided that you have a team, you have a champion, you have executive buy-in and all of these things, we see a lot of companies that do successful POCs, allegedly, and then they never end up putting things into production. And I suppose at that point you could argue whether the POC was successful or not. But if you ask software vendors, I think a lot of times they say that the only thing necessary for putting things into production is to have a good ML ops tool stack, and then the rest will sort of take care of itself. Nicola, what are your thoughts on that? What does it take to actually put something into production? I mean, what does that mean?
To take something, especially if we're talking about a machine learning system, from a proof of concept, which looks great in its little vacuum, and then making this as something that's going to work larger, it's not just the use of an MLOps stack, it's the consideration of how that model will flex and change with the flex and data changes over time. And it includes basically, so it lands up where your model is this little tiny chink that was contributed to and sort of built up during that proof of concept. And then there's this huge whale of work that has to happen before it each time, because you need to know if you can actually do your continuous training of your models. That's if you have a simple model, yeah, this is simple enough. But you also need to know that when it looks like your model needs to be trained, is that because of your data or because of your model? Is the ways that the data's changed, is it valid? Is it changed too much? Is it changing in a predictable way? Is it changing in an unpredictable way? One of these things is that, yes, it's important to have a good MLOps stack. yes, it's important to make sure that the problem you want to address is being addressed properly with the correct questions by the advanced analytics. But then you also have to work out every single other pin and needle in those haystacks that could possibly upset the balance. And then comes down to the core of remembering that no matter how nice you make the technology and no matter how many special things you put on the data, what comes down to the essence of AI and analytics, it's still statistical. And the statistical likelihood that everything is going to go bottoms up multiple times is pretty high. Because you're making an educated guess automatically on scale.
Right. Lasse, what about in your industry? Is it the same?
Yeah, it is. And there's sort of I have a personal issue with the, we're very focused on POCs. And I think that the problem we have with that is that a POC is very focused on testing the feasibility of what we're doing. So in other words, can we do it? Do we have the technical means and the skills to do it? And we ignore the other sort of innovation tests of desirability and viability because we're very focused on the tool. We're not enough focused on, does anybody actually use it? What does it impact on the business process? Is it also something that can generate some business value to us? So we're too focused on the tool. That's why I like when companies more think about sort of from an MVP philosophy, because a minimum viable product at least wants to test, is anyone going to use this? And does it serve the purpose it is designed to do? So I think one of the problems with POCs sort of philosophically is that they're too internally focused on just the feasibility of something. And we should focus more on how are people using it? And what does it actually generate? What does it do in terms of business process? Because as Nicola, I think you said sort of indirectly, is sometimes a simple regression model is all the statistics we need. It's more about how do we actually get it into production so that it starts generating value. And maybe a year later, it requires a more sophisticated model, but we're too focused on the sort of the cool technical aspect of AI.
I think the name POC, the term POC betrays the source of where the POC came from. It's usually more a technical experiment than it is an MVP is probably a much better idea, like you said, is to actually try and build a viable business-oriented product. Mattias, I want to hear from you. One of the challenges, I think, if we're going to expect businesses to express the technical, or not the technical, but the specifications of an MVP, they need to have the taxonomy and the understanding of the capabilities of AI in order to express that need, right? So data scientists can often hear of a problem and perhaps think of 2 or 3 ways of solving it using technology. But what we want is the business people to express their needs in a way that data scientists can understand so that they can perhaps come up with a good solution. And the question is, how do you staff up your organization so you don't end up with the emperor's new clothes? You have a person that doesn't know data science that's supposed to hire data scientists and then build an organization. How do you get past that chicken and egg sort of scenario?
Yeah, well, there is no easy way to the end result, so to speak. You have to have people you trust, and you have to build your castle from the bottom up. There is no way to jump ahead on scale. But just to make a small lapse back, we have to have considered how to run this in production for 2 or 3 years when we start building our models. I find a lot of clients are so eager to get going, and many have started the POCs, and the problem is that they have no plan for when to decommission models or to put them in production and do all that. And they don't have a team. They only have the team that's actually doing the ML implementations. And then all of a sudden you end up in the DevOps, which is good. But how do you transition that into a model that can run your predictive maintenance for you in your 15 plus factories across the globe? That's not going to happen if you only have a team of 4 people that are excellent at machine learning.
What is the sort of competence that's necessary for this to happen, Nicola? I mean, we're talking about mathematicians, and I have a bit of a pet peeve that everybody is a little bit too excited about statistics and PhDs and stuff, being that I have a computer science background, so I'm biased in that sense. But what kind of competence is actually necessary to have these long implementations, correct business plans, correctly implemented models and everything? Is it to have a huge team and to build up a competence center before you can even get started, or what's the right way?
I'd say it doesn't need to be a huge team, but you should have a dedicated team who handles your ML ops, who handles the relationship, as Mattias was saying, once you've actually got this model sort of developed to a certain stage by that little team of experts, those mathematicians, the PhDs. And then you actually have a dedicated team, which includes data scientists. It includes people who have a good understanding of if it's going on the cloud structure, cloud experts, cloud architects, engineers, somebody who is able to answer these questions. And instead of a large team, I personally recommend a multidisciplinary team. A team that they've got multiple skills. They can octopus out into a problem and they know how that connects to that. And if they don't know, they're comfortable enough with another member of their team to go, okay, I'm holding these two pieces together. Do you know where the duct tape would be?
So can I understand if you're saying clearly now, you're saying it's a good thing to have a team that is quite distinctly multidisciplinary. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
One person that knows the cloud, one person that knows and all these different things in order to make it actually happen.
Yes, the best teams I've seen actually put these into productions. They're not necessarily the team who develops it, but they're the team who are able to understand how it runs, understand how it has to be deployed out, has enough business to know how the end user needs to receive things, and is actually able to either make things happen themselves or have the confidence and the freedom of ability to find who's going to make something happen for them, and that their responsibility is making sure that the production side of these models runs smoothly, runs well, and is continuous to sort of reach that part of the continuous delivery and the continuous training. And I definitely say multidisciplinary. Like some of the best DevOps teams I've worked with, they've got some people in there who they're like, ooh, I really want to learn more about like the data science and the ML ops part of this because that's another passion of mine. So they land up branching out, and that little bit of extra competence they add out of their passion makes them excellent for managing an ML ops team or working on one, because they've got their know-how from their original competence and then they're spreading out. And then you may have a data scientist who is really interested in sort of all the process of things and may bring a little bit more computer science or a little more software engineering in. And that's what sort of is needed for something like this. You can have a huge team, but that's where I find the communication breaks down a bit.
Right. I really, I'm glad to hear something that I also echo as well, which is that these people that are willing to learn and try new things and dare to try new things is sort of necessary, because compared to databases, we're not working in a field where there are established best practices for every single facet of things. It's a lot about doing it yourself, was what you said. I like that a lot. So what about you, Lasse? I mean, if a company's looking for best practice or looking for guidance, where should they turn to find guidance so that you don't end up like the emperor's new clothes and everybody's just patting each other on the back and saying it's good? Who can be an authority in these things? Is it the cloud vendors?
The dilemma here is, and I would agree with what Nicola said, is like you want a multidisciplinary team. You want people with different backgrounds. What I would add there is also people who have an understanding of sort of behavioral sciences. I worked a lot recently with ethnographers, for instance, and it's really changed my work, because now I understand why we as humans don't always make data-driven decisions. We should instead focus on behaviors and not so much decisions. But the challenge then companies have is, okay, I need a team with all kinds of different backgrounds. I'm not going to find one or two persons that have that. So I'm going to have to hire 10 people. And that's a huge decision to make. So how do you go about that when you either have to find a unicorn or a couple of unicorns, or then hire a large number of people? So I think currently the best practices and what we've seen larger organizations do is you combine internal and external, and you hire your own people for for the roles where you find them, and then you complement with either sort of contractors or then outsourcing certain tasks. I don't see currently another way of doing it, because the best approach is to blend different backgrounds. In terms of where do you get where do you find advice for this? I would say try out different models, because you're able to mix internal and external. So you can obviously then look at different consulting and other companies who can provide those resources and try out and see what works, and be ready to flex and adjust and learn as you go. Because just like the technology, also, the people in this case, there will be lots of changes and you'll learn as you go. So it's not just the data that you'll learn about how people behave and how you influence your own organization.
That does lead into my next question. I was going to ask, to what degree should organizations depend on consultants for rare cutting-edge competence and that kind of thing? Mattias, I can imagine that a lot of larger organizations have this sort of, they take pride in having everything in-house, and there's a lot of, how do you say? Well, this is a very neat area to be involved in, so I think a lot of companies want to have everything in-house. In your experience, is that something that is feasible? Does it work well, or is it a good idea to blend?
I would say
even if you
blending
can
is the only way. You can actually go with only consultants for a while, but in order to make it happen for a lasting period of time, you need your internal staff as well. What I have not seen any company being successful with trying to build it just in-house. Those that I know that have tried have gotten nowhere. It takes forever to get all these competences on board in your organization. And most of the time, 3 or 4 will leave for a more exciting project at a different employer before you get your project started. That's just the way of the business. So
you're not talking about just small companies, but this is big and small companies.
Big companies, and even if it's a huge company where you have career opportunities in the company, they will leave inside the company for a different position, a different project, a different role. There is no way to keep a team intact unless you have them all at the same time, and that makes hiring them organically virtually impossible.
Right. Nicola, what is your experience on consultants versus tightly knit internal teams?
When it actually comes to the application of MLOps, I have only seen blended teams so far do well at this, for the exact same reasons, in that there is the loss of people in the company, people being more lured over to exciting projects. Because when you are dealing with, as Lasse very well put it, some unicorns, these are often people who are very driven, and they want to find what is the most exciting thing that's going to stretch them and challenge them next. So you sort of need to get them while they're there. I do think it is important to have those internals, and that skills can be built with internal staff who are passionate about sort of learning more or sort of increasing their skills there. And I'd say that sort of the balance is nice. Like, obviously, as a consultant, I'm not going to say you don't need consultants. That would be shooting myself a bit in the foot. But I can say that you need to have, like, I've done some things where I've helped set up teams and then hand over the leadership of that team to someone internally, because that's the best way that it's sort of going to work for that company. You sort of need the decisions and the drive to come from within the company, and then those extra competencies that are missing can come from the consultants once it's full set up and running. Like, right. If a company doesn't have the ability to know how to set it up, call that help in and then take ownership of it.
Right. Well, this past year in specific has been very special for myself and for everybody else that works with data science. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how this working from home new reality has made the operationalization of AI and advanced analytics different. Has it made it more challenging or less challenging? Lasse?
Yeah, this is a good question. I had to quickly sort of post it on our internal Slack to see what kind of comments it generate. The first reaction I got from one colleague is that why would why would this be any different to the AI and advanced analytics work than sort of any other fields of knowledge working? I mean, everyone has the same, we've seen the same changes in that less contact with people, sort of person to person. It's, we don't do the daily stand-ups at the Kanban board and all of that stuff. But at the same time, things like, meetings are probably a little bit more constructive and better managed because we take them virtually. But in terms of AI or data science specifically, I don't see it being that different to other fields of knowledge work that we do. There might be some compliance type of changes if your work requires you to physically be on the premises because of maybe the data cannot leave the premises, or there's some machines that you have to use that are on site. But other than that, I don't think it's a big change, and that's mostly because this whole field of data science has evolved through collaborative tools.
Well, let me give a little pushback here and hear your thoughts on this. Is there a difference between a team of 20 Java programmers and a team of non-homogeneous cloud database, model hyperparameter tuning experts and people that really need to communicate tightly but don't know anything about each other's topics? Is there a difference between the collaboration requirements of those different types of teams?
That's a good question. I have to say, honestly, at this point, I don't know. I think it might be too early to say if there's a difference there. But yeah, it's because the collaboration tools have been there all along. So whether it's your code repositories or your Slacks or other communication tools, so that's always been there. And people have used that. So I think that's helped a lot in this field. But yeah, I'm not sure if the multidisciplinary team is different to one that is just sort of single skill.
Right. Mattias, what about you? How has CGI seen the past year affect the way that you guys work? And I think it's interesting to be speaking to consultants here because obviously consultants start with the premise of not being necessarily a deeply embedded part of the team in the same way that a full-time employee is. So how has it affected you guys?
I would say that it's very, it depends on the project. I would say we have trouble with certain IoT style projects where we have to go out and collect data, where we have data gaps and all those things, because it's a very hard process once we have the data and setting up the streams and working with the machine learning and all that, then it's fine. Also, the process of finding business cases where the explorative process out in businesses is really difficult. When you're not allowed to meet, you're not allowed to have the first interview face to face and those things. That has slowed us down a lot. But once we are in the development mode, then I see that, just like Lasse said, we have the excellent tools from many vendors that assist us, and we're just as efficient as we always been. So I would say where we find the value is the issue, and some of the projects and some of the tasks where you really have to collaborate face to face, then it's difficult. Otherwise, we're just.
I think we're lucky that we already have a lot of the benefits of collaboration tools and processes that have been developed for a long time in the software engineering industry, and that we can just bring them over into analytics and AI and benefit from those. And if we think of it in terms of a process, a multi-step process, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, all three of you, on which of those steps people fail on when it comes to using advanced analytics and AI efficiently across the organization. And if I just define them, you have, ideation, technical preparation work, something that's machine learning focused or analytics focused, and then the operation of the output. If we think of those four steps, which one do you think, or have you, in your experience, do customers really have the hardest time coming to grips with? Nicola?
I'm sorry, but you're going to have to repeat the question. I had a drill start.
Well, there, from the ideation of an advanced analytics workload to the decommission of the model, there's many steps there. Do people get stuck, or do companies that fail, do they mostly fail because the data is not clean? Do they fail because their MLOps tools are insufficient? They can't monitor it correctly? Or do they fail because the idea was bad to begin with, right? Like, where along this continuum why do projects fail? At what step is the biggest place where they get tripped up?
I'd say the step that I've seen the most projects from the widest a range of companies fail is it's not that the idea was bad, is that the idea was looking in the wrong direction and too big. They, instead of starting with something small, something adaptable, something achievable, seeing how that worked, and then building on it, they've gone, okay, I'd like the moon, I'd like it tomorrow, and where are we going to put this? And that's where they're falling. It's after the proof of concept, when they're going to go in production, what they've wanted and what they think might be possible and what's been communicated lands up being something that is going to be 5 years in that next stage of development to make it actually work. But they want it tomorrow.
Right. Lasse?
Yeah, I was gonna say I've worked with enough companies to sort of be able to respond to that by saying it depends. So I don't know if there's one single step that is more difficult than any other. Some of them, it's really hard. You know, you have an IoT sensor that requires manual extraction of data or some other things. It might be the technology, it might be in your traditional ways of working or something else. But I think once you start drilling into that and getting to a few different levels below, sort of in your root cause analysis, a lot of it still comes down to the fact that it's in the ideation phase that you don't create enough business ownership and accountability to drive that thing forward, because organizations are still people, we're still humans, and you can get through anything you want in an organization, regardless if it's a good or bad idea, if you want to, and if you have the right people behind it. So to then say that, you know, this idea, we didn't get it into production because of so-and-so technology reason, it just means that at the bottom of it all, you didn't have enough business ownership or sponsorship or somebody who just pushed it through. That's how organizations work. I mean, it on PowerPoint, it looks different, but in the end, we're humans. And if you have a person who can get a change implemented in an organization, they will always be successful with that. So I'd say that's why it's in the ideation phase, because that's where you get your business ownership for that idea and you test it.
Mattias, you started off by talking about two companies that had not done well with their AI implementation, and perhaps that's a nice way to sort of tie this up. At which stage was it that made it so that they were not successful?
I would say that selecting the wrong business case. And I would say that some of that blame would go on us consultants. It's very easy for us to say when they ask us, can you do this? We always say yes. And that's horrible. We have to have the ownership of actually being able to create the value that the client is looking for, and have the honesty to tell them that this isn't going to work. This is too hard for you. This is the most advanced analytics case you could pick. Pick something easier so you can get it flying before you try to capture the moon. That's where we fail, and we fail with our clients. It's not their fault. I would say it's actually more our fault, telling them that we can do something that hasn't been done before and no one knows how to do.
I think that's a very good thing to sort of tie this up together on, because it sort of exactly lands on the point that you all are making, that if the consultants come in when the ideation is complete, so to speak, and all you're asked to do is to say whether you think it's a good idea or not, perhaps it's already too late. And it's very neat that all three of you have said that in your experience, the projects that have not done well is because of the ideation and planning, which was not sufficient for the remainder of the project.
Yeah, and there is also the issue that many clients do not want the consultants in the sort of strategy discussion. They want to handle that themselves. And then all of a sudden you end up with a short list of business cases, and they ask you only on those business cases, instead of having the discussion on on how do we build a lasting ability to implement and run these things for the next 5 years. And many clients would most naturally go to having to do this for the rest of their organizational life, and trying to pitch out and have several different vendors doing bits and pieces of this, and how are you going to get that into a lasting ability? It's very difficult.
All right. I think we got a lot of really good bits of advices here, and I like the fact that ideation became a central focus of what we spoke about today. Thank you all for joining and for taking the time to join this session. To all the viewers, thank you for joining, and we will be seeing you very soon in the next session.